Today, we're talking with someone whose work we very much admire. Nikki Pedrosi, the creator behind Scrolling to Death, a powerhouse voice exposing screen time dangers. She's a researcher, an advocate, and a mother who took her family's experience and turned it into a mission to protect kids everywhere. Nikki breaks down complicated tech in a way that's accessible, empowering, and frankly, life-saving for parents. And we are so excited to have her here.
Thank you for joining. Before we get into this, though, I want to remind everyone that this is a completely judgment-free conversation. If your kids are on tablets or phones, social media, that's real life, and we're not here to shame anyone. Our goal is simply to give you the information and tools that you need so you can protect your family in a way that feels right. And if you've already exposed your kids to devices or have them on social media, that doesn't mean that you have failed or you can't go backwards. You can always go backwards. And so I teach my kids and have these conversations with them to explain to them that we can make changes based on what we learn, based on what the research is out there and what works for our family and what doesn't. And so I think that's really important to state before we get started.
Love that. Yeah. So for parents who don't know your work, can you share a little bit of background on what led you to create this?
Yeah, I love that you said I'm a researcher because that's what I feel like. I do. Like I just look at these legal complaints and these reports and research and try to summarize it for parents. But it started. Oh man, I was a social media executive. So I started my own company managing social media for companies and ended up in the end being primarily for tech companies. And so I was on the other side of this, but personally wasn't on social media. I got off in 2020 and was not a social media person. I stopped posting my kid, but I looked around and everyone was still kind of fully in on all of that. And my kids, as they got a little bit older, I was like, how am I going to approach this whole topic with them?
How old are your kids?
So they're 10, 5. Sorry, I went out of order. They're 10, 8, and 5.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're still young, but I was seeing you see kids on phones and TikTok and stuff at like 8, and
Yep.
so
Younger.
Yeah, even younger. I know, which is sad knowing what I know. And so I started doing more research back in like 2022, 23 on social media use in children and found like shocking stuff. Like the suicide rates in young kids had tripled or quadrupled depending on gender. There was a link between like childhood depression and anxiety and their use of social media. Like a Surgeon General's warning went out about that around that time. And I felt like parents everywhere needed to know about these stats, but also the tougher stories of kids getting harmed through various things that happen online so that we can take that information and make whatever decision we want. You guys touched on it really well in the beginning. That's like not about judgment, but we do need to do our due diligence and research before we hand our kids these extremely powerful technologies. I think across the board, like whether it's social media or phones, the business goal of these companies is engagement. They need eyes on screen as long as possible, even the phone companies. And that just doesn't align with a healthy childhood.
So true. So we know that kids today are struggling more than any generation before. From your research, what's driving this and what's changed in the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation, really summarizes this well. If there's parents who haven't read, or anyone that hasn't read that book, please read it. But I think there was, how he describes it, there was like a spike that started in back when we started handing our kids, like early 2010s, when we started handing them phones with front-facing cameras and social media access, Instagram, Snapchat, all those things came on board. And we just saw alignment with the growth of that, with the increase of mental health issues in children. And turns out, now that we're getting access through some lawsuits to internal documents at these companies, turns out that was intentional. One of the slides about their vision for Meta is addiction. They built these products and the functionality to be addictive to children, to keep them scrolling. And unfortunately, what keeps kids on an algorithm longer is the bad stuff, the violent stuff, the stuff that emotes or creates like a negative reaction. And so that really aligns with what we're seeing in kids, more negative mental health states.
And in addition to the mental health, I think we have to look at the fragmented attention. That was always something I was personally concerned about with our kids, is that I personally saw it in myself. I have ADHD and a reading disorder, and one of my kids also has that.
Yeah.
I have 4 kids, and you can see the impact when I was testing kids back even before there were smartphones, and I started to see the impact when they came in for testing. The attentional difficulties that they had just were so much more exaggerated, and even the ability to hold a pencil. They couldn't even do that properly. I was sending every single kid that I saw to occupational therapy because they would swipe with their fingers. They had iPads then, but they couldn't hold a pencil. And so kids were given iPads at like 2 years old. I mean, even before that, kids now are exposed at 4 months of age is the average,
Oh my
thinking
God.
that this is educational.
Yeah, well, I mean, you touched on so many things there. Schools are giving kids access to these devices starting at 4 and 5 years old at public and most private schools. And they're playing into this. The people who develop these technologies know that kids have shorter attention spans. So they're creating educational games that are really quick moving, give you rewards to keep that dopamine going. And it's just reinforcing the shorter and shorter attention spans of these kids. It's why we need to be showing them like long, slower movies, not like these short TV shows, and not letting them scroll through algorithms of short form content, because it's wiring their brain to not be able to pay attention and ending up with ADHD like symptoms, right?
Yes, very much so. Well, touching on that, what do parents still not understand about how these platforms are designed? The part that's truly dangerous.
I think everything is turning into social media, right? You got Spotify adding comments and video and chat. And then you have Roblox, which is very much like a social media experience. The games there are user generated games. They encourage socialization within the games. And the social media companies over time just started copying each other with all the same functionality.
Yeah.
Like Snapchat tries to say they're a messaging app when they literally have like an algorithm and a map and messaging, but they also have like encrypted data vaults and rewards, all these things that Instagram also has if you line them up next to each other.
Highlight what you just said, though, about these platforms are social media. People don't realize that Spotify, YouTube, those are social media technically.
YouTube, thank you.
And I think that's so key, because most parents think, oh, well, it's YouTube, it's just videos.
Well, it's surprising how many people don't know about Roblox.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I could talk about Roblox for
Let's
hours.
do that. Let's dive in.
Parents think it's basically digital Legos. Let's just set that up for some parents who may not know.
So not. Like Minecraft, maybe, not really, but like is a little bit more benign. But because Roblox is 40 million different games, and growing all the time. And the games are, like I said, user generated by random people that you don't know. And then they're age gating, like picking an age range for the kids. And they want to say a lower age range because then more kids will go into their game. You have no idea what's going to be in these spaces. You have no idea who is going to be in these spaces. And there's been reports for years now that call Roblox like a pedophile hellscape for children because of how many predators go on there pretending to be kids and befriend children and then end up asking them for like nude imagery or sexualizing them. And it's just like when parents say, okay, but that's not happening to my child, I just want to shake them, because I'm like, well, okay, first of all, you are not sitting next to your kid the whole time they're playing that game. Typically, the kid is playing with their friends. Okay, so they're not offline. They're playing with their friends and they're chatting with their friends. All it takes is their friend to invite some stranger into their little game or their group. Now you have a stranger in that group. So there's definitely threat of predators coming into your private spaces. There's definitely threats of inappropriate content and just violent and crazy games. I mean, there's school shooter games where you can go shoot students in a school. There's beat up the pregnant person, like where you go beat up a pregnant, like it's like beat up homeless people. There's literally.
I've been listening to your podcast, and I think that one of the things that I hear over and over is the parents whose kids fall victim to these things feel that they're being so diligent. Like they don't feel that they were being negligent in any way, of course.
I've interviewed hundreds maybe of parents who've either had their children severely harmed or like literally lost their child to something that happened online on a number of different platforms. And these are seriously good parents. Like these are parents that had all the conversations. A lot of them had all the monitoring on. It just happens to good families. And because predators are smart, you think that we can compete with the neuroscientists and the technologists that Meta puts in a room to create the most addictive and harmful platform for kids? Like it's just, we can't compete. That's why like we have to be loud and angry about this enough to make cause a stir, and also pass laws and file lawsuits and take some other avenues, because these companies are not going to be safe on their own.
I think the difficulty, what I hear from parents, is that they say my kids will be excluded from their peer group.
Especially with Snapchat and teenagers.
And I hear it with Fortnite and Roblox. I hear that with like the younger side as like, well, they're coming home and playing, and then they are excluded from that conversation in school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a real feeling, and I'll acknowledge that. But I think also your kid will be excluded from the predation and the addiction and the harm and the cyberbullying that also happens there. I think it's a choice between safety and exposure. And there is a time when you have to start introducing technologies to children, but I just vehemently disagree with having to give them access to platforms made by companies that don't give a about like the kids. But I do think for parents, like we have to come together on this, and not, we don't want our kid to be the only one, then you have to be brave enough to like send an email or a text to all the parents with like little bullets of like, hey, have you seen this report? Hey, I'm hearing this. Hey, this kid just reported this. Like, how about we like have them play a different game where it's not user generated games and there's not so many stories of predation happening. Like, so there is efforts that can be taken, but I think parents are scared of bringing it up and feeling like they're judging other parents for that decision. But I have a feeling that the parents that you bring this up to also have an inkling, but they're like, well, if they're letting them do it, then it must be okay. Like, so we just have to be willing to bring that up with other parents.
I was talking to a friend today before this podcast about this, and she just moved to another town, and her son did not have Snapchat, but said that he had to get it in order to make friends or know what was happening in the new town.
This company started as a sexting app, like by, you guys probably know the story, by frat boys who wanted to send nude images with their friends, and then realized it was popular with high schoolers and just slapped a new name on it and almost the same logo. None of the functionality of those disappearing messages has changed, which instigates really bad and illegal behavior. The fact that the evidence literally disappears on the front end and the back end. Snapchat does not work well with law enforcement when there are crimes on that platform. The Snap Map leads to real in-person violence and harm, allowing drug problem on Snapchat. They prioritize and push drug content at your children and then connect them with drug dealers proactively through quick ad. And the drug dealer can just deliver a pill to your house that could have fentanyl in it. Like, that's why so many kids are dying from overdoses and poisonings. And I mean, I could go on and on. Like, they have an encrypted data vault where kids can hide things from their parents. There's just the amount of functionality that just goes against what's safe for kids and giving any parental rights or parental insight is just wild to me. And they still try to say they're not social media, which is just a way to avoid being regulated like other social media companies, or to seem like the safe choice, like it's just a messaging app. It's just parents don't know what it is, and we got to use anything else, like literally anything else.
I think what is important is having these conversations with our kids. And I think that sometimes is getting missed in terms of expressing our concerns. So this is what I've done with my oldest, who I recognize is not a teenager, he's a tween, but explaining to him why I'm concerned and what are the harms and what can you do instead. Saying like, hey, like, I don't want to have access to this. Like, can you guys just text me? My son still does not have a phone, but what we did in our class is try to get us a group together to do landlines. And so that kids can start talking to each other. And I think it's about parents trying to come together and having some kind of community within your grade, your classroom, and trying to initiate some rules and changes. And I think, honestly, ever since Jonathan's book came out, John has done a great job of spreading awareness behind that and having parents learn about that and make it easier for parents to come together.
Yeah.
So that's number one. And number two, with gaming, this is what we do. Play games with your kids.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't give them a game to just play on their own. And what is interesting and unique about this generation of kids, they have parents, us, who we grew up with games, right? We had, Nintendo 64, PlayStation, ColecoVision, whatever, Atari, and we were used to playing games. So we couldn't play games with our parents, right? Because they didn't have access to games back then. So we are a generation that know games. And so it's something not everybody is into, but we've held out as long as we could. And we have a very purposeful and intentional way of introducing these things to our kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key, is that when you sit there and play with your child, you can see what's going on and you have that connection with them too. I think that's really important.
Hugely important. I'm all for playing with your kids, any tech together with your kids. And that's the only tech my kids do is together. So if they're watching TV, I'm sitting with them, and it's a long form movie, and it's easy to get there. I don't know. I just think people are overwhelmed with the fact that the kids will be quiet for a long time if you just put them on the tech on their own. But slowly moving past that is actually totally doable. But when you talk about playing games together, you may know more about this than I do, but I've learned that the dopamine that kids get from doing something with their parent is a really high amount of dopamine that can give them what they need, that happiness feeling, without having to be locked into a screen. And it can even be co-playing a video game, but you're also interacting with your parent.
You're down regulating their nervous system. So you will likely have less outbursts from your child because they're having that connection with you. You're filling their cup, and that's what's really important. But something to note too, with there's so many options out there, games and media, it's like food, right? There's junk food and there's foods that are better for you and foods that help you grow. And so content is really important when you're looking to start these things with your kids. There are some games out there that are just junk games. And so you just need to be mindful about that and do a little research. We have a guide with some samples, but I think that's really important to highlight.
Yeah, and if you're playing together, you'll be able to see in real time if this is kind of weird, inappropriate, if there's weird people in there. Yeah, and so you can in real time be okay, let's find something else. There's so many options. I don't know why we need to choose the worst one.
And it's a great learning lesson for your child. If you're playing a game together and you say, oh, this isn't quite appropriate,
yes,
having that conversation of why.
And help them identify it if they're ever alone seeing those type of behaviors or content. Yeah.
Right. And teaching them what to look for. See, this is why this is not appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. That's a great learning lesson. And there are things popping up every day, like Discord.
Discord is an encrypted messaging space where kids chat while they're gaming. It's something that not a lot of parents know about, or they just think, again, it's just a messaging app. But kids are being brought there and on purpose because it's more private, and bad stuff is happening there. A lot of times when you hear about a report of a kid being preyed upon online or in person, started on Roblox and then moved to Discord. So it's one of those off-platform areas where kids are getting preyed upon or bullied. Someone sent me a webinar, which I'm going to attend tomorrow night, and it's hosted by the PTA, so the National Parent Teacher Association. They're having someone from Roblox and Discord present, and I'm eager to attend.
I'm so fascinated by
I know. These companies create relationships with trusted organizations like our schools and parent teacher associations for a reason. TikTok funds the National PTA, Meta funds the National PTA. And so there's really interesting, we have to question, even if you get an email from the PTA saying oh, Meta has this education program, we have to question and realize our gut tells us that there's something going on here.
We even have to question the FDA. It's the same thing. They didn't ban Red 40 for so long, knowing that it was in certain artificial dyes were in cosmetic products that were banned years ago, but they were still in our food.
I
just have to question things.
Just have to question things. And I also think it can feel very overwhelming with all these new words in games and apps that come out all the time, which is why for my family, if your kids are young enough, just keep them off of all of it and don't give them iPhones that they can get access to these types of things. Like there are kid-safe devices where you can really control.
Or iPads.
Yeah, let's talk about iPads because the kids all have iPads.
They
And
think
then
smartphones are. Wait, I want.
parents, we'll sign the Jonathan Haidt pledge. Wait until 8. I'm like, your kid already has an iPad, but they think that that's different somehow.
Wait,
iPads are large.
I want to talk about Discord real quick. What's interesting is that negative behavior happens less in Korea. And because in Korea, they make you sign up with your social security number when you sign up for it. So you only have one. A lot of people have like multiple accounts. And so they are less likely to act badly or say anything because it's tied to their social security number.
And now these kids have anonymity. They use avatars and fake names. Like there's no way it's getting back to them. And then you have other sites just disappearing the messages altogether or whatever. It's like encouraging bad behavior and violent behavior that can cause real life harms.
Well, so I was going to ask, what's one policy change that you believe will make the biggest impact for child safety? Would it be showing an ID or social security or something like that? And that question is for both of you.
Gosh, there's a lot of effort coming around like age verification and age gating. Countries, Australia passed age gating bill, so starting very soon. Yeah,
France is coming on board. Hopefully, Denmark.
Yeah, there was one more country that just got announced today.
Malaysia was the other one today.
I like the age gating idea just because it helps parents a lot. It keeps kids off of those addictive spaces. But some youth that I work with, the young 20s, they're like, we need to empower young people to make safer choices on their own and give them access to communities that they may need to. So there's like some pushback on it. And then there's obviously concern from people about the privacy of the facial scanning that a lot of companies are using to, like Roblox announced facial scanning to verify ages. And I contacted some gaming executives that I've interviewed a few times, and they're like, it is crazy that parents are going to let their kids scan their face and Roblox is going to hold that information, even though it says it's through a third party and it gets deleted. But it's like, do we really want Roblox to have the access to that?
What if these things get hacked, which happens all the time? Then people have access to your child's face and they can change it and use that information to access financial records and everything.
Yeah, but on the other side of it, like you let your phone scan your face every day. The phone also logs, like, in your photo albums, like it identifies faces and categorizes.
But Apple, I think, is a lot. Apple has like crazy technology behind the security there. At least that's what
Apple does a better job securing on their network. Yes, Apple is failing in a lot of other areas. So that's a conversation.
We already have Meta. Like I had to upload my ID, right? To when you
verify.
Verified, you have to upload your ID, and they had asked me for that. Why not just have that for everybody? I don't understand.
If it's 16 and 16-year-olds have IDs and they have to be 16, that does feel.
That's what I think. I think that you have to have an ID at 16.
Yeah.
So we mentioned going backwards for parents who are hearing this and sort of terrified. I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on how to help parents. I know even for my 9-year-old, just like helping him understand why we're not using an iPad anymore and what I've learned and the mistakes that I've made and being honest about that has helped me and helped us live a completely different life and be so happy.
And
incredible.
Let's also talk about what you were saying, that parents were signing this pledge in your class, Jonathan Haidt's pledge, or like wait till 8th, that you won't have a smartphone, but they have iPads.
Yeah. What's the statistic on the number of 4-year-olds who have iPads? Like, I think it's,
almost 50%.
Almost 50% of 4-year-olds have iPads. And I think there's this thing like, oh, I won't give my kid a phone until 8th grade, but like the iPad's different somehow.
But parents don't understand. It's like literally just a big iPhone and it has all the same functionality. It has the FaceTiming, the messaging, downloading all of these same apps. It's got the same parental control system. Like I just don't see the difference at all. I think that, the advocates in the space could probably do a better job of lumping in iPads and tablets with the no smartphones till 14 thing that's been going around. But a lot of families, most families let their kids use iPads either daily or a certain amount of hours per week or even more. I've seen even family members just be like, okay, they're acting up here. Take the iPad, go, you need to go calm down. And then in a bedroom by themselves on this iPad, and I'm like, you're rewarding them for acting out with a screen. Like, this is crazy. And
That
they're
has
like,
access to the entire world, I think, is that.
yeah, a screen that has access to, right, everything and anything. And so I think for parents, like, again, I don't want to judge, but I think we need to be understanding the seriousness of handing them that thing. And I think you can get even from handing it to them every day or letting them have open access to not at all, literally like being like, this is an adult device. This is not safe for you. It's addictive. It's bad for your brain. And we're going to wean off of it and then eventually not use it at all. Like, you can get there. You just have to communicate with them about it. It's going to be hard, but Natasha, you can probably speak more to the weaning off period.
Dr. Jean Twenge just came out with a great book, and she goes
10 rules for raising a kid in a high-tech world.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I have an interview with her, and she lays it out so simply. It's like really good, and it covers a lot of the aspects and struggles that we're dealing with.
And I think it's not that, like, obviously some parents want to say, I want my kid to have some technology. I don't want my kids to be, there, there's digital literacy classes, literally. Kids are digitally native. They don't need to learn technology because it comes so naturally to them. Yeah. Honestly, I'm on Instagram a lot because of my job and what I do. And my own kids who will be sitting there with me, they're like, well, you just do it this way. It's easier. And I was like, how did you know that? And they're like, well, it just makes sense. It would work that way because it's intuitive to them, right? But I think we have to tell parents that it's okay to come up with like a family contract. Do it with your kids. Sit down together and say, okay, well, I want to have you be a part of this conversation, right? Let's figure out what works best. And obviously you're going to have boundaries and say, that's not going to work. And these are the reasons why. We're not going to have these things in your bedroom. We're going to have a house iPad that we have parental controls. And Apple, I will say, they do a good job having controls on there, but it is very hard to learn how to do.
We have a guide on how to make your smartphone a dumb phone.
Isn't that interesting? Apple, being a company that's created the most seamless tech that literally can do anything, somehow their parental control system screen time is hard to figure out.
It's frustrating. We've now made it simple, and we have that guide of showing you how to turn not just a smartphone, but an iPad into a, quote, dumb phone. And I also have walkie-talkies, which, work on cellular, and those are great. But someone says like, well, I already have a phone. I don't want to spend the money on the walkie-talkies. Turn that phone into a dumb phone.
Yeah, which is like most parents are, if their kids are having access to a device, even if it's like sometimes or just have that home phone, it's typically an iPhone. But I just want to challenge that to be like, that's an adult phone. It's so much work and it's good. It's great you're guiding parents on how to lock it down because
it takes all about 20 minutes to do it.
Yeah.
Once you know how. But
I would say that there will always be workarounds. Kids can very easily like get around some of those things.
Very much so. Like once your kids are older, and that they can do that. And so there are better options out there.
I would just say, like, if you're trying to decide what phone that should be, it should be one of the kid-safe phone companies like Gab, Bark, TrueMe, or Pinwheel. Like, they literally made phones that start empty and you add things on rather than starting with everything and you have to take everything off.
I think that the concept of having a family meeting around it to start to go backwards is such a great concept. I think about that for myself, and I'm like, I really like that idea. I also, I'm sure you both are into the tin can thing that's coming out.
Yeah, mine's coming in a couple of weeks, I think, and I'm so excited. Yeah.
So excited. Me too.
My little old school phone still that,
And I love that a lot of the parents in my class, now we're going backwards, taking those away and buying the tin can and replacing it. So that's like really exciting to see.
I think that's important to note, Emily, is that you're not stuck, and you can have conversations with parents and try to get people on board. And it doesn't have to be everybody. There always will be outliers, right? My kids are in a Waldorf school, and so they're very intentional about technology, but I still even have parents that aren't on board.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But if you have a majority, or at least a couple, your kid can say, well, I'm the only one. Well, I know you're not the only one, actually.
I just love the tin can landline situation, or any landline situation, because I think kids have really lost the ability to like verbally communicate without even seeing each other. And I think it's such an important
The
skill.
phone etiquette is off. Like, my husband and I will watch my son be on the phone, and
he has a landline.
We have a landline, and thank you,
in the living room.
And we're sitting there watching, and my husband and I turn to each other like, we have to teach him like how to talk on the phone. We have to actually teach phone etiquette, which it's so interesting because we didn't have to do that as kids. This is not something we had to think about. There's so many different things,
Well, our parents modeled it for us too. Like they get a phone call and answer it.
And like things that our parents will, like grandparents will question, saying like, well, you guys knew how to do this. It's the same thing with like frustration tolerance. We have to, and like delayed gratification. We have to teach our kids these skills, that were built in when we were younger. All these developmental milestones that were built in, they're no longer there.
Right. And then we have to add on like teaching them how to text, like the texting etiquette. Someone called it text-etiquette yesterday. But like, I think that the verbal communication needs to come first. And it's like the order of things that are developmentally appropriate. We should be learning how to verbally communicate before we're texting each other. We should learn how to handwrite elegantly before we're typing and tapping. I mean, this is like we just are jumping ahead when it comes to a lot of like prioritizing digital.
We should run before we should walk, but people don't realize those skills, they're foundational skills. Even handwriting itself is linked to being able to have more success in school. And we're teaching our kids like, we have to teach them to read at 4 years old, which doesn't make sense to me at all. And all of the research out there says that. Yet we're trying to have them stuff the academics down their throat at such a young age when they should be exploring and moving their body.
And teaching them to read on devices, which is way harder for them to retain any of it than from paper. And so I'm like, we're doing this all wrong.
Out there show that. They know that we're comprehending less.
Yes.
Okay, wait, let's focus on that for a second. There was an article in the New York Times a couple weeks ago about laptops in schools.
Yeah.
And kids being exposed. Was that
Gene Twenge?
Yes. Kids being exposed to porn even in schools from these school laptops. We're talking about problems with Google Docs, that schools are pushing Google Docs as like a big thing. And those are exposing kids to all kinds of problems. A, what do we do here? B, like, I think for Nikki, from your perspective, what do you know about these problems, and what do parents need to know about this? And what can we say to schools to stop them from giving our kids laptops?
Yeah. Kids don't learn from tech better than paper and face-to-face. Test scores have plummeted over the last 10, 15 years across the globe in countries that have had one-to-one programs where kids are learning from devices. They're extremely distracting. I think kids spend for every hour an average of 36 minutes doing other things than whatever they're supposed to be doing to learn. A lot of the apps, the ed tech apps, are gamified, and which is not how kids learn either, through gamified apps. There's ads on a lot of things that are popping up of one kid I knew got a naked woman that popped up while he was playing a math game in class. They're learning through YouTube, which is addictive, and this short form content is bad for their attention spans, and also the content is really bad. I've gone through this journey myself with trying to opt my kids out of devices at public school, and then ended up leaving the school because I was told that I could not opt them out, and have now taken legal action against some of the ed tech companies who collected thousands of videos and audio and photos of my children and have shared them with other companies, who knows, dozens of other companies. And so parents should be concerned about this. They should be willing to show up to, first of all, contact their teachers, their principals, and their tech at the district. Be willing to ask the questions about, how is this better? How is this benefiting my kid? How are you protecting them from bad people and bad content on these devices. I do have a side organization called Tech Safe Learning, and there's a website, techsafelearning.org, with a bunch of templates that parents can use to start those conversations with their schools.
Awesome. We're going to link that here for sure.
Yeah. Anyways, I could ramble on about that for a while. I was trying to summarize.
I think presenting the research also, because some schools will come back, at least what I've seen, is they'll say, well, there's controls on there. They can't access, X, Y, and Z. But it's also related to the learning, And so we have to present that as parents to the schools and saying, well, this doesn't make sense. They're not learning as much. And luckily those studies are available and more are being done right now.
Yeah. And we have that listed on techsafelearning.org too. And I just think we're going to get to a point where I shouldn't have to convince you that it's worse. You should have to convince me that it's better. I'm hoping more parents take that stance of like, tell me why that device is better than giving them a worksheet or a textbook or a lesson in an analog way.
And I think in the interim, we have to tell parents, have conversations with your kids. If you're ever seeing something at school, come to me. I will explain it to you. What I've noticed when I posted about the scripts about where babies come from and explaining sex and the progression of that conversation, so many of us are nervous to have those conversations with our kids. But when we do have those conversations with our kids appreciate it and feel safer knowing that they can trust us and will come to us when they don't know something. And I experienced it myself in my own family when my son came and asked me a very sexualized question that he had heard about through peers. And my husband was like, I'm not answering that. And he was shocked and he sat there and I answered it very clearly using medical terminology, explaining what it is. And so now my son feels comfortable and safe that he can come talk to me. And so that is the important key, that you want to establish that relationship with your child so that if they are exposed to something at school, they will tell you and you can explain what's going on.
Yeah. And I do think those conversations need to happen earlier than any of us are comfortable with. Like the kids are seeing porn at 10, 11, 12, like some younger. And so if your kids around those ages, like it's likely that their friends are talking about it or have showed them something. And so you need to jump in there and start having those tough conversations.
Very important, because you don't want your child questioning and or figuring out what it is, or turning to their peers who may have different information or the wrong information. And I always say most conversations are a progression, right? And so we have to introduce it early on in a developmentally appropriate way, but it's ongoing.
Yeah. There's a great book series, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures by Defend Young Minds, Kristen Jensen. And they have a version for younger kids and a little bit older kids, but it's how introduce pornography to them. So I think that's been a cool resource for us.
Where can parents find more of your work, stay updated, and stay involved in pushing for safer tech?
Scrollingtodeath.com with a number 2 has all the podcast episodes, some interviews and stuff there. But I keep most updated right now on Instagram. Not my favorite platform, but I think that's where most parents are. And so today there was a hearing in the Energy and Commerce Committee about a bunch of online safety bills that was really interesting. And I just live posted videos from that. And so there's a lot of real-time stuff happening that you can keep updated with at Scrolling to Death on Instagram. And then LinkedIn, I'm posting on a lot. And then I would say too, I'm exploring other safer platforms. There's one called 8. If you go to weare8.com, it's a social media platform that's all positive and doesn't have any of the negative stuff. The algorithm doesn't try to keep you on a long time. It's really an empowering space. So I've been posting a little bit there too, and hope to move over to some safer healthier social media in the near future.
I love that. That's great. So if you could leave parents with one single message, what would it be?
That is always a hard one because my mind goes so many different directions. And I think I always just have to go with, you guys brought up Roblox, and there's been a lot of pushback from parents who are like, I don't want to keep them in a bubble, right? I think that's really been on my mind a lot, of how to walk the line between preparing your children for a digital life or a digital future while also protecting them. And I want to plug that I think it's really important to protect them from addictive and harmful platforms when they're young, not to shelter them, but to allow them to develop critical thinking skills and real life in-person skills, so that if and when they are faced with those platforms later on, they can handle them better. They have those neurons firing in a healthy way and can recognize things that make them feel uncomfortable more than if they had access at a younger age and that has become normalized to them. So I think
100%.
Yeah. So that's like what I've been thinking about this week.
And I think parents don't have to think about that. Like, we're not taking it all away. We're just delaying it to provide those foundational skills so that they can be prepared later on.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be forever. It's just, it's
intentional
too much for you right now. We're trying to keep you safe. We're trying to let your brain be healthy and grow. And we're trying to just keep you safe and do what's best for you. It's okay if you hate me about it. Like, it's okay if you're not happy about it. Like, I'm just here to keep you safe. So I think that is an okay thing to do for parents, and be that bad guy for the sake of their health and wellness and safety.
I 100%. And you're not the bad guy. You're a parent.
Yeah.
You're not their friend.
Right.
And you're going to have boundaries. So 100% agree. I think that's great. Thank you, Nikki.
You're welcome.
This podcast does not constitute medical advice or recommendation. Please consult your doctor.